really got to try on that left-hand side. What happened?
Oh, but I've gone up and over and bloody head over biscuit. It wasn't enough stability there for myself, but no, I was busting for a bit of meat this game. It didn't seem to work out.
Hello, cheers, and welcome to the Scrum of the Earth podcast, the weekly show for news, reviews, great interviews, and so much more all about the world of rugby. My name is David Lawrence. I'm an American rugby fan who follows the game wherever I can find it, all over the globe. If you'd like to get in touch, well, I'm easy to find on all your socials, and you can always just drop an email to thescrumoftheearth@gmail.com. Well, as you have no doubt deduced, this is not your usual weekly episode, but is in fact yet another bonus episode. This week, I am thrilled to have a favorite guest of mine back with us to discuss the conclusion of the WXV, which happened on Saturday. Rugby Julia, welcome back to the Scrum of the Earth. How the heck are you?
Thanks so much for having me, David. I am doing all right. It's been a great tournament. How about you? Did you enjoy your rugby?
I really did. I had 37 matches to watch this weekend by my little list, and didn't catch all of them, but the WXV probably took priority. The NPC playoffs, I love that, but the action in the WXV, what a tournament.
And we are more mentally healthy than ever.
I mean, I'm not sure who you mean by we, but okay. Well, Julia, the second iteration of the WXV has come and gone. I want to start right there. You kind of asked me the same thing. What did you think overall? Did this year surpass last year's tournament? What was your overall level of enjoyment?
So, good way of framing it. Enjoying it. It was different from one, and it's also going to be different from the third, which is not going to happen next year because we have the Women's Rugby World Cup.
Indeed. Or as some people call it, the World Cup.
The World Cup. That is what I call it, but I get all sorts of comments when I don't. And there is loud rumbling. I'm pretty sure it's all but confirmed that there is going to be another restructuring in 26. So what we see here now is great. We've got a lot to chew on. There's definitely some stuff to look at, especially as we're going into a World Cup year. But that said, there were several, I guess you wouldn't call them hiccups. Everything kind of went off without too much of a hitch. But in terms of the tournament itself, the ease with which people like us can get new people into it, it's not quite there. But we definitely had a lot of interesting matches to talk about. We got to, again, see some teams that we've never seen on the global stage.
Yes.
It was completely thrilling.
Netherlands and Madagascar, very high on my list of teams I was dying to see.
Absolutely, and both provided, both had great times. Unfortunately, neither got the end results that they wanted, but making a lot of strides. That's what we want to see at that tier. And you mentioned, too, that we're in WXV3. Ended up being a fantastic competition. As we predicted way back when we talked before it even started, that was the most fun one to watch. We got to see a lot of clashes of styles. WXV2 also had a lot of that as well. And then, of course, we have storylines from WXV1, the cream of the crop. There were upsets. There were heartbreakers. It did ultimately provide what we were looking for.
So my plan tonight, I thought we could quickly wrap up this weekend's action and then sort of look bigger picture, if that's all right.
That sounds great to me.
So based on where we are, you and I physically right now, I felt obliged to start with the USA. We had a huge showdown for our Eagles against Ireland this weekend. In the last 6 meetings leading up to this one, the teams had exchanged wins. It was 3-3, but it definitely felt to me like the Irish had a bit of momentum, especially after that historic victory over the sort of sputtering Black Ferns. By the way, the venue, this was one of those pitches that looks like it's like a velour shirt sort of stretched out on a baking rack. Did you notice that? How weird is that?
I did. There was, especially in WXV1, and I'm hesitant, and I think that you'll agree with me because we as North American rugby fans are kind of hesitant, and not for kid-gloving ways, but we are a bit hesitant to lavish the same kind of critique that we would if this were in England or even New Zealand or Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't make excuses for them. There were some very strange decisions made. At least the pitches that you were talking about, those were actually Canadian football. For us, it's American or Canadian football. For us, it's gridiron. for everybody else, I guess, that was the kind of stadium that it was. First of all, it was too big. That was how you got the complaints out of England. And then, much more important for everything is that it was synthetic. It was turf. Playing rugby on turf is miserable. You saw everybody taped up. It can be argued probably many years from now, we wish the studying was faster, but many years from now, whether that contributed to the injuries that occurred. It's a conversation that happens all the time in PWR. Yeah, and in Farrah Palmer, that the surfaces are perhaps pieces of the ACL puzzle. I don't know. I agree with you. The facilities weren't amazing. The crowds weren't amazing. I think the competition still was.
Yeah.
So you brought up USA. Definitely we should start there. To the untrained eye, I guess it would look like it was another rough competition for us. I should say that people like you and me, when we discussed it together, and also other consummate USA and Canada watchers, are all understood that going into this, we were underdogs for WXV1. It was great that we placed there. We were in 2. Yep. Great that we placed there. It was going to bring us up against some competition that we don't get to see a lot. Unfortunately, that benefited more other teams, not us. But we still got to. And the Ireland match, for how the score ended up looking, considering that I had some, I hate to sound like fans of another country's team, but I had some complaints with the officiating. But it happens, and it just means that I'm becoming more of a rugby fan. So so I have those complaints, but I will say, without the little nitpicking complaints like that, I was quite happy with the improvement that we were seeing. It's what we both predicted before this started, and we said that we would come back to it after. And I think, especially, the one that I think about the most is our conversation that we had about England. We set out what you and me, our dumb guy parameters for what a win would be, and they hit it, which was scoring more on the red than you'd think, keeping the margin smaller. We managed to do that. More importantly, we had, I think we can agree, obviously I'm not in the camp, but it was pretty obvious from the matchups that they were targeting that Ireland match. And you know what? For a good amount of that match, for about 60 to 80 minutes, I thought there was absolutely no chance we were going to win.
We did that, that, what do they call it, the championship minutes. We got that 14-7 lead, just, I think, heading right into the break.
Absolutely.
It looked so good, and then they just kind of whooped us 19-0 for the rest of the way. I mean, that makes it harder, when you're like, we might, you go in thinking we don't have this, then you think we got it, and then,
Yeah, it is the hope that kills you, of course. But to that, I will say, I think that it speaks to something that we knew and that we expected, which is good news, because you don't want to learn about new weaknesses that you have, or unexpected gaps that you didn't see coming. Honestly, when you look at it, and I know that I've made these excuses before, but most teams train together more than the USA and Canada do. The amount of time that we get together, the sizes of our countries, the focus or lack thereof on rugby, we have a lot against us. We are overcoming it, and that's why you see things like the bronze medal happening. Those are despite the challenges that we have, not that we've overcome them necessarily. And it makes it hard to finish. One of the hardest things for any rugby team to do consistently is finish.
Yeah.
That's hard for any team, and we saw it across WXV1. We saw it across all of WXV at all. Certainly, you see gaps in armor, you see gaps in planning, you see physical preparation, start to deteriorate. I don't want to keep making excuses. It was a loss. That's disappointing. I think it could have gone a lot worse. And I think that Ireland specifically, we could have a whole other pod episode about Ireland and what we saw and the development that has happened in a very short period of time. And a lot of,
I would love to.
A lot of what happened with Ireland is simply not happening with us. So,
yeah.
So,
It's interesting. This is totally off script, but it occurs to me because, I was, just before we started, I was mentioning I had a chat with Alan from the Craggy Rugby podcast about Connacht, another team I support, and who are always fated to lose because they're the bottom rung on that Irish ladder. But his attitude was just, it gave me a lot of hope, and I felt reinvigorated in my support for them. And I wonder, are Americans just bad at rooting for teams when they continue to not produce wins? Like, do we have a harder time than other nations saying, yes, it was a loss, but we got this and this and this out of it?
So I also had that initial fear, but it's honestly not what I'm seeing. And this may be the grace of women's sports versus men's sports.
Yeah.
It might just be that, but there is a resilience, and I don't see the doomerism. And now you and I can take it. We are both also fans of various Celtic teams that also take historic L's sometimes. It's incredibly hard on the fan base. You with Scotland, me with Ireland, or with Wales. We have seen what like a desperate and at the bottom of the well fan base looks like. I don't think that that's us. I really don't think that we've broken into our big fandom yet. I think it's going to build, and honestly, the same way as basically every other nation, but like England, New Zealand, and France, everybody kind of had to build their audiences in a less organic way because women's rugby is not the thing that you default to. Even if you're a rugby fan, it's not what you default to. So fans of women's teams tend to kind of self-select, and those tend to be people who believe that the best can happen. I mean, it's also rich.
That's a great point.
I was going to say it reminds me of, you and I can talk about this. It may not maybe resonate overseas as much, but like I think of WNBA fandom because the finals are happening right now. And just you see what like 25 years of very heavy like branding, regionalization, getting home team and rivalry loyalties. We're about to form our first real attempt at a professional league. We look at NWSL, we look at WNBA, even the PWHL that just got formed. There is a steep curve for building anything in America.
But I feel the rumblings, and it's funny. You mentioned doing a whole side pod. Like the WNBA could also be a whole side pod.
Yes.
Oh my word! Like the Caitlin Clark effect, the ramifications, and the things that the doors that's open that made us go, oh geez, didn't know this was hiding in there. There's a whole beast in there, and a lot of people would argue that they've been given this golden opportunity, and they're kind of blowing it right now by trying to face off with football on Sundays. But anyway, like I said, side pod.
True. I mean, and that would be an interesting conversation for you and me as fans of both of those. But no, you're absolutely right. So that's kind of what I see with where we're at with USA rugby fandom. I think that there is a lot of money on the table, and as Americans in American sport culture, and definitely like in sport business culture here, I think that is one thing that I would say that America is good at, is that we are good at recognizing an untapped potential and being more willing and more patient to build it, and not have to try it once or twice and then be like, well, that's it. And you have seen that happen in places where rugby is way more prominent. We've seen it happen in a lot of the Celtic nations. Yeah. You run out of money, you run out of people to advertise to. We're never going to run out of money. We're never going to run out of new young girls to try to encourage. And of course, that leaves out that, of course, we want young boys and men to come and watch as well. That's going to be slower just because of the nature of rugby. I think there is a benefit to most of the USA fandom right now, having been connected to the sport in one way. So all of that is ways to say, like, they know what to expect. We know that we're not going to become all-stars overnight. It's kind of like the inverse of the Caitlin Clark thing. It's not going to just come out fully baked. It's not just going to be ready day one.
Well, this weekend our 14 points to 7 lead ended up being a 14 points to 26 loss. Ireland, you already kind of hinted at it. They must be over the moon with their results this year. My final note as I was watching this one, I wrote down, my Eagles are left with more questions than answers. And
Certainly.
so I want to ask you, what questions would you start with if you were in the Eagles coaching group?
I would be looking at this tournament and I would be cautiously optimistic, because what we saw is that there isn't as much of a rostering crisis as it might have looked on paper. We do have some injury problems. Our depth just isn't there because, again, like, we are still building actual grassroots foundations. We're still building pathways at like the high school level. Talent identification is not super easy. We pull from the same 5 or 6 universities in America. We tend to pull our athletes from university programs, which is very different from the UK, France, New Zealand, all of that. We simply don't have academies and clubs that will develop.
No, and which speaks
like
to why our sevens
Zion,
program. It probably speaks to why our sevens program, because those athletes, you can pluck them from track and field and stuff, and you're not,
Absolutely, and we've talked about it before. For better or for worse, it's a sport of the rugby codes. It's much easier to introduce them to sevens than to anything else.
Yep.
So it does have that. I mean, I also don't mind if we get 15s players via sevens. If they don't spend too much time in sevens, they won't form bad habits. Just come over to 15s. The big benefit that we have in America is that we don't have a competing physical contact sport necessarily. I mean, in some places we have hockey. That's very limited places. Also, those girls tend to be funneled in really young. By like 5 or 6, they know that hockey is going to be their whole lives. Yeah, well, there are a lot of young girls who play soccer and keep getting carded. There are a lot of girls who play basketball and keep getting carded. Come play rugby.
That's actually a great point. And women's hockey's much bigger than I thought. And it's all types of people too. Because there's the skill players, there's the bruiser players. That it's what we want from maybe a pool for.
I heard people enjoy watching Alev Kelter play. If you enjoy watching Alev Kelter play, thank USA Hockey, because they didn't select her for Sochi, and then she came over to rugby.
Exactly. Oh, so, thank you.
Yep, that is exactly. Thank you. That is what happens. But Charlie Jacoby, I think one of the best props to come through the USA program in a long time, came from cheerleading. We are not afraid of pulling from unorthodox places.
Yep.
That's another thing I think.
I mean, we have to. We got to think creatively. We're far behind the other countries in the world, but we have this giant pool of athleticism and willing players and money.
And but that whole phenomenon is why I think that we do have the skill that we have. Because I think about, I mean, Alev is obviously one that I think of a lot, but I think of several players on our team who came from various different sports, and you can tell in their skills. And because of that, there is an aspect of unpredictability to our play. I think it's why we did as well as we did. I have noticed, especially being a fan of all of the rest of the big teams in women's rugby for so long. And, this is also, unfortunately, a whole other topic, but there is a lot of talk right now about the aspect of predictability in women's rugby with the rise of, they rose a while ago, but with the Red Roses, Red Ferns, the worst mashup team of all time.
They are predictable.
They are predictable. And so much so that their coaches come out and been like, I realize that that's a problem or whatever. And then also came out and said that they're the best team in the world or whatever. It also means, it means that that's going to be a new target on their back, which I'm thrilled about as a North American rugby fan. I'm happy. I'm happy that they're running their mouths, because I think that teams like Ireland are going to start gunning for them. And most importantly, I think that Canada, we know them. We know Canadians quite well.
They won't technically gun for you.
They won't gun for you.
They have very responsible laws.
They'll just drive you into the dirt. They won't be mean.
They'll say, sorry, it didn't mean to smash your head in.
Sorry, but I didn't smash your head in. But, I think about that in contrast to, I felt the same palpable frustration that Kate Zachary felt when she was interviewed after that Ireland game. I think that's much more our American flair. But I think the Canadians, I think they don't like that England keeps talking about them like they're not in the room.
I mean, good. Canadians with chips on their shoulders. I love that. I'm, if when you and I get started, the first thing we talk about is all the other things we can talk about, and then we.
My mistake. Let's collide by it.
No. It's us. But so I want to move on to the next thing, but I do have to hit you with the sad stats. I labeled this category the sad stats.
Please.
USA were the only team in the WXV1 to go winless. We're the only team to score fewer than 50 points in total, and the only team to concede more than 100. Our points differential was the same as the points that France scored in total, 60. And we're the only team to fail to get any bonus points. Were we just not ready for this tier?
So it's a good. I'm positing because it is a good question. It's not a good question. It's a valid question. It's what we need to ask ourselves. It still feels unfair to ask because I feel that there is a big unspoken issue of the way that the pools went.
Yeah.
And we honestly saw that in WXV3 as well, with who ended up winning one, and the other one that you expected was going to put up a fight couldn't because they were put up against all of the toughest. One got all the weakest, one got all the toughest. When you look at who we played, we two of the three were top three teams.
Yeah.
Ireland had the same problem, but some of the other ones didn't. If it weren't us in one, who would it be? Is my thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like somebody has to come bottom.
I think that,
I don't know if being in two would have been better for us.
Right.
I think it was. I was proud when we got announced to be in the WXV1. I was like, okay. And then my next thought was, oh no! But I'm still proud of that.
I am proud, and I actually look at my. Well, I guess at this point it's like my second or third team, but I look at Wales because Wales has the inverse of what happened with Ireland. Wales was in one kind of by grace the first WXV1, sorry, and did the same as we did. Completely bottomed out. It wasn't good. One can still argue now whether they learned something because they were in two this time and still didn't thrive.
Well, we're definitely going to get to them. I am wondering what else. What else you thought about this weekend? Like, so we had New Zealand bouncing back. They got a convincing win over France. I was actually a little surprised about that. How should teams of these fans of these teams be feeling right now? How should the French fans be feeling, and how should the Kiwi fans be feeling?
I wish I had Alice Soper here to back me up about New Zealand because I just don't know enough.
Oh, a question about her is next on my list.
Oh, wonderful. Great. So I can answer the France one first. I don't know what it is. It's very hard to be an insider with France at all, but definitely if you don't read enough French, which I don't, something seems up with France.
Yeah.
I don't know what. There are all sorts of rumors and very little substantiated, as is very common with French rugby.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, actually, a side note is that a lot of the French sport media went behind paywalls, so now it's very hard for us to access them at all. Well, right, because I'm not gonna subscribe to your tiny little Toulouse paper.
No, not if I then have to rely on Google to translate it for me. So
yeah, exactly. So I'm not sure what's going on there. It doesn't seem like a particularly happy team right now.
No.
They are very disciplined, though they don't show unhappiness on their sleeve. Like, for example, we're going to talk about Wales. It's not one that's easy to read. I think France is very disciplined in that way. Something is wrong. I know that there has been butting heads between the two coaches. It's weird to have two head coaches, one that the players really want, one that the Federation really wants. I don't have an answer for that, except for that I do think that it's absolutely playing out on the field because they haven't lost too many big names. They've lost a few big names to retirement, not a ton to injury. And we also know, thanks to the Summer Series, the Six Nations Summer Series, the development in France is going fine. So in terms of what happened, I think the Black Ferns suffered an existential defeat. That scared them, which is good. Not that I want anybody to be scared. I love all the rugby players.
No.
But I wish the Red Roses could be scared. I'm glad. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad as a rugby fan because I know that it means that more fun is coming down the pike. It means that it won't just be a hegemony forever.
Well, you mentioned her, Alice Soper. She was on this show. Boy, it was longer than I wish, but she mentioned she made the point here that winning the World Cup might have been the worst thing for the Black Ferns. Do you think that idea has been borne out?
So yes, I do, and you and I have talked about this as well, and it was more of a what if, and it was several months ago now.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that it hasn't.
Even
been
then, I didn't foresee a loss to Ireland.
Right. Well, and we were talking about it in terms of USA. So what I'm glad is that we haven't seen it borne out here, which was a big fear, especially going into a cup year. But I think it was a wake up for the Black Ferns. You never want to see anybody lose. It's a very lovable team. It's a lot of players you love to see succeed. In terms of winning the World Cup, I think it's exactly what Alice said and what we worried could still happen. It gives the governing bodies a reason to say, oh, did it, got it.
Right.
We're actually good. And by the way, the next time one of you girls comes and complains, we're going to point to that. And especially when we get asked hard questions, because it's easiest to bat them away that way. And we want a reason to keep pressing. New Zealand absolutely should be able to keep pressing on their union despite winning the World Cup.
I do think they've been pretty affected by retirements as well. Like some of the old guard has definitely sort of fallen away seemingly all at once, you know.
Yes, and there is also, and this is an item that I simply don't know that much about, and I don't think any of us really can because it's something we're not steeped in. But it is the looming threat of rugby league. We simply don't have this kind of competition that like they do in Oceania. It's more lucrative to play league.
Yeah.
The teams tend to treat you better. Often you get more perks. You know, there are a lot of things that like a 22 or 23-year-old fucking all-star is gonna be attracted to. It won't matter. You can't convince a young star athlete to just be like, man, you got to stick with it because like, you know, it's the culture. You know, let's do it for the culture. No, it's the world is burning. Nobody can afford a house or healthcare. You're gonna go where the money goes. And certainly Australia has a problem draining talent to league.
Definitely.
We know
the Kiwis in my life tell me that they aren't worried about that, but maybe they just have their heads in the sand. I
think it's less so in New Zealand than it is in Australia, but we know as another place that is near a very similar country to ours that like often things that happen in one of our nations is kind of a foretelling with the other.
Yeah.
New Zealand, I think, has more leverage to keep people in union, which is great. I think honestly, there's more of a risk with the changing eligibility requirements for nations. A lot of people who are from other islands nearby, draining out there. And those are all small pieces of the puzzle. But overall, you know, I kind of just want to say like it's a thing that happens with sports teams. Like they're not every team that was the best once doesn't stay the best forever, and performance can slip.
The thing I'm wondering about next is what is the next storyline in New Zealand? Is it and then everything fell apart, or and then they figured it out and got back to what they do well? Like I'm just fascinated to see what happens next.
Well, I think they are literally asking that right now. I think that's an ongoing conversation. I don't know. And from like a turbo outsider, like you could not be more of an outsider. I don't see, you can't lose that culture. I don't know. Union, I assume that Union has as strong and storied a foundation as it seems like it does, what they present to the outside world. But, I guess it's probably wait and see.
Well, before this weekend started, you and I were messaging about the one that we were probably both most looking forward to, Canada looking to take that biggest prize of them all. As we both suspected, though, it was not to be. I did appreciate that as Canadians, they gave us a final score that is also a Rush album, 21-12, but it was flipped. So, unfortunately,
now it's ZYY. It's fine.
There was a great interview I saw with them once where at some point Alex Lifeson said, the only reason I've stayed in Canada is because of the Z. If we ever get rid of the Z, and then Getty kind of said, by the way, they did get rid of that. It's Z now. And he was like, what? Anyway. Yeah, and once again, this is the 5th podcast we've spawned. So the Red Roses, they predictably ran the table. I recently described England as the Leinster of women's rugby, like undeniably great but impossible to root for. I feel like you managed to get a little more joy out of watching them than I do.
Me?
Yes.
Was that like on purpose? Or are you just fucking with me?
I kind of lobbed it over the plate.
Bright red. Okay. So I do. I just love to watch the Red Roses. What I really love is a team that tells you that they're the best in the world. I love it so much. Look. That was not a consummate domination. I understand that literally every
21 was the fewest points they scored this tournament, right?
It was the smallest margin, smallest or whatever. There were more discipline problems than were even carded, and there was a card that got petulantly questioned. Look, I don't feel that they are the.
That's not the English way.
Why? Because you did it. Anyway, it's fine. Look, I am.
That was one of my favorite impressions of all time.
I didn't do the accent that would get us both canceled on rugby Twitter.
Yeah. I appreciate that as well.
And I don't even think the English can ever charge it late because we're the colony. It's fine.
No. It's the only nation you can always make fun of.
It's never racist.
Exactly.
They even admitted it, and I really like that there's finally a little bit of a narrative, even in English rugby media, that perhaps it wasn't a complete dominant performance. I think that a lot of chinks in the armor were shown, which is what you would expect. It's definitely what you want Canada to do. I know there was a lot of conversation around Canada's performance lacking a few key hallmarks of Canadian performance that either couldn't be there in the form of Sophie DeGoody or just didn't show up at the time, which was just the discipline that you wanted and a little bit of the like elementary practice pitch stuff, which just goes out the window when you're playing an extremely high pressure. They were at home. It was for the title. It was going to happen. I'm again not making excuses. They lost. England did raise the trophy. That said, I am so pro Canada and so vocally like trying to get everybody into it because I really do think that the final is going to be Canada England. Like
okay, well, you just set it up for me. Hot take alert. Are you ready?
Yep.
Here's the hottest take I'm bringing tonight.
Let's go.
Canada, you are so much fun. If Michelle Kang threw $4 million at the Canadian program, are they winning the World Cup next year?
That's a really good question. And I just saw, I don't know if it was if it was an interview or if it was just a story that had a few quotes.
By the way, do you notice that when I set up a hot take, I don't actually give the take, I just ask you to do it for me?
Yes, exactly. I love getting canceled, so I don't care. I'm totally fine with it. Oh no, now I just forgot the question.
I'm sorry. I was just saying, would Canada win the World Cup next year
right.
if they had a nice entrepreneur show up in their locker room and say, by the way, here's $4 million?
Good question. So I was actually talking about it in a chat full of our friends. We can drop a bunch of pods, but with a bunch of the Wales folks with the various Welsh podcasts. Shout out Hugh,
Indeed,
Harley, Sean, all my friends. Hattie, what's up?
I built in a question to find out what's happening with that pod later on too. So
Wonderful. Yeah,
I've been really enjoying it, and I want to make sure we get some coverage there.
Absolutely, we're about to. No problem. So that's a good question, and I found out somebody was reading some article. So it turns out that Canada had 4 weeks of prep for this tournament. Most of the other teams had well over a month. Some of them had 5 or 6 weeks. I think England had 6 or 7. There are a lot of things that I think even large amounts of money can't necessarily surmount quickly.
Sure. Yep. I
think
that World Cup's coming sooner than we think.
It's so the World Cup is coming much sooner than we think. It is well under a year away now.
Yep.
No amount of money will change how big Canada is, and no amount of money will change the fact that right now, and even going into 2025, I will caveat again. Yes, we will have the Women's Elite Rugby WER, which is going to be the professional league here in America. We don't know what the deal is going to be with having Canadian players. We don't know if Canadian players will want to come. That would probably be easier for them if they're vying for national competition or vying for a national shirt. It'd probably be easier, but we don't necessarily know what the pay will be. Living in America is unlike living in most of the other major rugby nations because we have we're lacking a few things that all of those other nations are, primarily healthcare. It's healthcare. Well, so I bring it up and I really like talking with you because when I bring this point up, I understand that it gets kind of brushed away by my UK and European colleagues, that it's kind of like, well, what can you? And I was having a conversation with a few of my various women's sports fan friends, most of whom are UK or Europe based, and they were shocked to find out how much our university costs, and that many people take on lots of loans for this, and that lots of Americans take on credit card debt for healthcare. There are so many things that that aren't necessarily cold hard cash that some people have and some people don't coming into rugby, and whatever. All of that is an explanation for why I can't say for sure, because if life were any affordable to Canada, of course they would come and play here. But there's a lot to consider. Also, a lot of the Quebecois girls really like playing in France. Sure, totally, that makes sense.
Sure.
Culturally, it makes sense. That is always going to be a challenge, the same way that it's always going to be a challenge for us. We are hoping to negate it with WER. Even still, WER only has the 6 inaugural franchises.
I think it's 6 now.
So,
but nobody knows much about it, and I'm told that the biggest fear is, well, our best players are already over in the PWR anyway. Are they going to be enticed back? Is that reasonable to think?
A lot of the girls over in PWR have jobs. A lot of girls over in the PWR have found partners. Some people have gotten engaged to people that they have met over there. We don't know necessarily that they would come back. We often look at rugby players when they make the professional level as just like little, game of life, little pegs, the little kid pegs. You just put it in the car. There you go, taking it over here. You can't.
I like that reference.
Well, they're people. You can't just pull them out of where they are and be like, if you want to play for USA Rugby, which by the way at this time doesn't even get that many matches per year, if you want to retain your shirt, you have to come back. You will lose money. You will possibly lose sponsorship endorsements. There are all sorts of things that might be going on.
Your family will be uprooted.
Your family will be uprooted. And I'm thinking of several high-profile players. Kate Zachary got married, and her wife has a permanent job in London. She left Exeter to go play for the Trailfinders because it was so important to be in London with her wife. Yeah. I don't think that you can say even to the captain, like, hey, are you chill with coming back to San Diego? We don't know. So I look at Canada, who has the same problems. That was why I was giving all of that background. And the 4 million, I think, would buy them a lot of rugby infrastructure in places they don't have it, which I think is a big problem. They have Vancouver, and they have Quebec, Ottawa-ish, and then nothing. But lots of talent, lots of athletic talent in the middle, playing other sports. They need they need more competition. They need more places to play. Obviously, if you could pay the national team, that would be great. But without knowing more, I think 4 million would strengthen the program. I don't know necessarily that it would revolutionize it the way that that they badly want. They have designs for it. They just don't have the infrastructure for it.
Let's face it. They would find a way to turn around and spend it on a new men's coach.
Well, that's certainly a concern.
Which they desperately need, by the way.
No, so that was where I was going. Was that's not even a road we need to go down. But honestly, I think if you look at where it is right now, and who Rugby Canada has breathing down their neck right now, I really get worried that they would just be like, ladies, can we give you an IOU? We will totally give you this 4 million back. But right now, if we don't find a coach that doesn't make everybody angry, they're going to leave.
We're good for it.
We're so good for it.
Just to keep moving in the WXV2, you must have been pleased to see Wales get off the schneid 19-10 over Japan, but it felt more of like a phew victory than a yay victory, right?
Yeah. Yes, and that was the consensus feeling among the team. They have been much less reserved than they have been for a very long time. And while it looks messy, perhaps it's promising. They are not, I think of, and only because it was something that was big in sports news over here right now, I think about the NWSL blow-ups that have been happening right now, finding out about payments and about horrible misconduct in back offices, and how all of this was turned around by a bunch of players being like, if you do not fix it right now, we will leave. We don't see that sort of thing among several rugby teams that perhaps could use it. And in fact, a team that did is Ireland, and it worked. But
remember the photos like on Instagram? Their changing room was out back next to some dumpsters, and they were taking pictures of the rats. And the IRFU was like, "Could you please stop doing that?" And they were like, "No."
Yep. And so
take away the rats, and we'll stop photographing the rats.
WRU does the same thing, and this is very well informed hearsay, but hearsay, officially hearsay, but just letting you know. WRU, on the other hand, just threatens them. And there is substantiated talk that there has already been a little bit of an attempted ousting. I don't know to what extent. I know that the girls are as unhappy with the coaching as the fans are. Okay. It has finally reached a consensus, it seems, that there needs to be a change, so much so that even the very hesitant to, say anything or do anything, BBC Wales has been like, this guy kind of sucks, doesn't he? Not super well liked. It seems like there's a lot of morale trouble on the squad.
It looks like it when you're just as a viewer.
Yeah, and especially for a team that has no problem being effusive. We know when they're having a good time. But that's what makes being a fan of theirs so fun. It was what brought me years ago. And I know that it's possible. And that's really how I know that it is not a problem with the players. It's not a team that has had huge turnover. Unfortunately, the small turnover that it's had is highly substantial. As Siobhan Lillicrap and Eleanor Snozel, two extremely important members of the team. Both are still coaching. They're still around. But all of that is to say, there hasn't been some huge upheaval. There hasn't been, a mass exodus or anything. Slowly, you kind of narrow in on, well, what is it? And it's kind of obvious now what it is.
It's starting to feel that way.
It's starting to feel that way. And, I'm glad that we brought it up, because that is a case in point that will make the case that I was making, that unfortunately sometimes you need to just have a bad performance. One last bad performance to go, can we be done now? And
I have that tiny little fear that they lost their last game. There could be more of that papering over.
You should see my group chat. You should see the group chat with the Rap Pod folks. That is a huge fear when we were
Yeah.
watching the Italy game. Yes, Italy.
Well, thank you very much. South Africa lost to Italy 19-23. I was a little surprised by that one. Were you? Like, I don't know what to make of either of these teams, I guess.
So Italy, I think we did even talk about it. We were talking about it long ago enough. They became semi-professional. Contracts came out. Then not much more happened, and we haven't heard much since. And a lot of the Italian girls are still playing abroad. They're either playing in France or Spain. Some similar problems to like ours and other ones that have a lot of their players go play elsewhere. I don't really know what's going on there. And those girls tend not to be super chatty or outward about what's going on. They don't like making their messes public, which is fine. It's their prerogative. But I'm not sure. In terms of South Africa, it's going to be so much fun to watch them so soon. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled with how well they played in that match. I think they should have won. That's not even a hot take. I think everybody agrees with me. It was great. It was certainly not as well as we expected them to perform so soon. But we all know what South Africa is capable of because of the men. It truly
Everyone is like, oh Jesus, this.
You should
now?
be scared shitless. So this is what I say to people that I've brought into women's rugby who had no foundation before, so don't know about the absolute dominance of South Africa men. And on its face, when you look at the recent records,
you wouldn't know it from Twitter though. They're very quiet about it. They don't let you know.
Oh, the South Africans?
Yeah,
they're on Twitter.
No, I don't. I don't
see many. I don't see many, and they're never in my mentions.
Oh wow, lucky you.
Look at me. No, in fact, it's so weird. So, because I haven't gotten to talk about South Africa a lot in the past, I'm getting all sorts of great traction with South Africans because right now I'm being nice to them. And then, but so many have started following me, and I just wanted to be like, first of all, I need you to know I piss everybody off. I have a lot of bad opinions, and most of them are wrong. But I say them with my whole chest. And then once in a while, I have a really good opinion, and everybody comes back, and it's a mess.
The gadfly. No, I feel like you're growing into this role that I handed you the first time we talked.
I've been owning it, but I didn't want to put that on you. I didn't want to give it to you if you weren't.
It's Socrates. It's not me. It's Socrates.
I really like it. I'm fine with that. And honestly, I don't mind because I do feel, and this is delusional, but I do feel like once in a while, one of my cockamamie things that gets kind of a little bit big, and I know that one or two people who matter saw it, and then they start talking about it. I'm like, yeah, that's right. You say that psycho shit.
That's right.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. I do think that Wales is going to beat France, and it's going to be with Kaylee Powell at 10. Let's go.
There we go.
And that's just super inside joke.
I'm here for it. So I had a bit of a heartbreaker as a Scotland fan. They lost to Australia, 31-22. Did the Aussies just kind of rope-a-dope us all by dropping that friendly against Wales just prior to the start of this competition? It feels like, oh, they can't beat Wales. Oh my God, they're so good. What's up with Aussie?
That's what a lot of people were asking me. And my honest, my less funny but honest answer is I don't really think so. I think it absolutely took some time to get revved up, to get up to functioning speed. I will say that I feel like I predicted this, at least in some way, talking the praises of Jo Yap so highly. I knew it could happen. And I think that's why it didn't surprise me. I'm thrilled that it happened much quicker than we expected. That is what I will say. Definitely.
Thank you for mentioning her name. Quicker. I completely forgot to put her in my script. Jo Yap. All the talk in the lead up, it was in the lead up to the Wales friendly, was like Jo Yap, and then the result happened, and we were like, it seemed like the world went, wait, does she know what she's doing? And now we see it. We see it, right?
We do, but also, unfortunately, that is a tendency that we have with women coaches, whether they're new or not. I mean,
I think you're right.
For folks, yeah, exactly, and for folks who remembered her time at Worcester, was just like, no, just wait. It's absolutely hard to get up to speed as a national coach. First of all,
Yeah.
while she had been a POURA coach, which is nothing to sneeze at, and she did a great job at it, no less. That's still not the same as playing in the PWR isn't the same as playing for a national team. Coaching it isn't either. I'm sure there was getting up to speed. Of course, especially when it's not somebody who's from your program, who came up through your program, it's harder to snap right into trusting them. You need to learn your coach a little bit. She had to learn who plays well together. She had to learn new combinations the same way the players themselves did. I think she really succeeded at what USA is really looking to do. I think she is doing a lot of the work that we are just a little bit behind doing. And that's just her own rugby IQ. And also Australia, of course, was a little bit ahead of the ball compared to us. But I do expect that it's probably going to maintain. I don't expect that it will slide back. She is a workhorse. People really respect her, which is really big, especially in women's sports.
She has a profile that makes me think of her in that realm of like Warren Gatlin, Steve Hansen, Andy Farrell.
No, that's
she's like that. She's one of these like visionary. I have a different way of doing things. Yeah.
Yeah. Reminds me a lot of Lynn Cantwell, who is revolutionizing South Africa. Absolutely. Just somebody with a very clear but relentless vision forward, not willing to settle, and people around her who can provide her with stuff don't want to make her settle because, like, when she's proud of you, it feels nice.
Yeah.
But those are really good coaches and she's one of them. That's what people say all the time.
So the WXV 3 was an up and down competition, I would say, yielded some amazing matchups, some big results. This weekend, Samoa, they blasted Madagascar 46-15.
Absolutely.
Shout out to Hugh. You kind of already mentioned him, the stat boy. He sent me a great one this morning. The top scorer for all three tiers was, of course, Samoa's Cassie. Is it Sayataga? I think it's Sayataga.
Yes, it's Sayataga. Yeah,
Okay.
Sayataga. It is. So he blasted that to our group chat first, and everyone was just like, "That's boss! Tweet that."
Yeah. No, I saw it all over Twitter afterwards. She racked up 34 points. I think he was telling me he was doing a finger count, and I had to do the same thing. But for instance, the top point scorer in the entire top tier was Canada's Alex Tessier with 22. So, big difference. Of course, they were busy scoring tries, I guess. Anyway, how good was Cassie this tournament?
Fantastic. Samoa in general, also on an upward trajectory, which is great to see. We really want to see that development in Oceania because, of course, it is a region that for some time was being completely poached by New Zealand and to a lesser extent Australia. I'm thrilled to see it thriving. There are, and this is across the board, and especially considering the other things that Samoa is dealing with in terms of their rugby union that has nothing to do with them whatsoever. But when you're a tiny union in a tiny
side pod number 8.
Not really. What can you say?
Actually, that's right. I don't want to do that pod. No, thanks.
Well, you don't want to have that pod, but also, what can you say?
That's what the police blotter's for.
Yeah, no, it really is. That's what jail is for. Samoa's had a hard go of it. Fiji's had a hard go of it. Tonga certainly has had a hard go of it. But to see one of them thriving is fantastic. Fiji is also thriving. They've had a little bit more of a leg up than Samoa. I think there's a good future. I don't think it will be, super rapid. There are a lot of money problems, both in terms of internal corruption and also just not having a ton of it. Hopefully, World Rugby will step in and at some point realize that it is worth it to kind of even out the Oceania competition. Same with Asia, to be honest, but Oceania for sure. That will be something that they will have to decide is worth value. I know that the women's game will stand behind it. But yeah, I don't know. There's not too much to say about them yet because it is really kind of in its nascent stage. It's just starting, but it's a good sign. I expect to see them again, but I expect to see them again in 3.
the Netherlands, they got their first win in the tournament over Hong Kong, China, 33-3, the exact same score that Glasgow got against Zebre. Coincidence? Oh wait, it's a total
I think
coincidence.
so.
I love throwing out the potential conspiracy theory that means absolutely nothing.
No.
Aha!
Got him. Didn't. Completely unrelated.
Of course, also Spain, they managed to just hold on. They beat Fiji, who had an off day, I think, this weekend.
Yeah.
It was the difference was the penalty kick on the 77th minute that put it out of reach. Strange performance by both these teams. Any hot takes on either of these games?
Agreed, and I'm honestly not sure. That was a weird one in general. I agree that both performances were not what you expected out of either of them. I will say I expected Spain to win. They had a really strong early performance. They run really well on positive vibes. They are a very vibes based team. They were having a lot of success. I think the team is gelling well. They have a really great leader in Laura Delgado. I think a lot of things added up. I think the stars aligned for Spain. I do think that this was their tournament. They pulled out more and more. I guess it's true that the last match was not their strongest and most glorious performance, but they did pull it out. And I think it's really more a testament to the constant ongoing conversation. It's in the men's game as well. Both the men's and the women's game have an ongoing conversation about a team that needs to be in the Six Nations. For men, it's Georgia. For us, it's Spain. I don't know how we're going to reconcile with this, but I don't think they can just lie dormant and I'm sorry, I can't say it in a nicer way, and just keep beating the shit out of the Netherlands every year for the Rugby Europe Championship.
Yeah.
I don't think it can keep going that way. The same conversation around Georgia. We're going to have to make something better for them, for Italy, for them, for Portugal. I don't have an answer for that, and that's why World Rugby doesn't hire me.
I have to say, I really loved this competition this year. Only now that it's over, you kind of already mentioned this. Only today, literally, did I realize it's not going to be back next year because of the World Cup. And I was thinking, oh, how much are we going to miss it? Then I realized we're going to see most of these teams.
Have the World Cup.
This time. Yeah, we're going to be watching most of these teams anyway, so maybe not that bad. But and you also mentioned this. I also read that they have decided that that'll be a time for them to reevaluate this competition from top to bottom, try to make it even better when it does come back. So, Julia, if you're making a shopping list of things you'd like to see done differently for 2026 in the WXV, what are your key ingredients?
So unfortunately, I really wish I had more good business and organizational ideas to make it better. I really don't know how we improve on what is very obviously a flawed pool system. And the tiering. The problem is I think 3 is the right number to have. I think that is roughly about the stratification that we have in women's rugby globally. That's okay. I don't know how to make it better. Perhaps not pools playing pools. Perhaps pools play within each other. But honestly, my wish list is other more kind of more woke rugby values things. Number 1, never play in Dubai again. Nobody should be playing there.
I was going to say two tiers had home advantage. The one that didn't was a neutral site, but is it really neutral in the sense that you and I think?
No, not at all. There are so many reasons we should not be playing in Dubai. The top 10 are all reasons that don't matter for a rugby podcast, but I'm right. The rest of them are because Dubai isn't conducive to rugby, which is probably why it's not big there. I really wish it wasn't in Dubai. I would really like to see it somewhere where there is an organic rugby crowd. I think that
can you think of a neutral, an actual true neutral site that isn't also politically charged?
But also, why does only one tier need a neutral zone? None of them need
no. I'm arguing. I would say that nobody should get a home. It's completely unfair if there's a U.S. home. Anyway, I think we're talking the same language.
Yeah, absolutely. So either all 3 tiers should be at neutral places, or all 3 should be at one of the participants. I think all 3 should be at one of the participants. I'm fine with that, and I love
but maybe the lowest ranked. Would that be cool?
Well, so it just so happens that happens to be where I wanted it to be anyway. But Antananarivo is the right place to have this.
Oh,
It would
love
well,
it.
it would do one. Okay, Madagascar is constantly pulling 3,000 person crowds
Yep.
at like on Wednesday at like 3:15.
Yep.
Okay, we're not pulling that at like Twickenham sometimes.
That's right.
So
You mean the
I'm
Aviva?
oh, sorry. Oh my God, you're right. The BP Shell Corp,
I will
whatever.
never skip a chance to mention that.
I hope you do, but mostly with English people because
Yes.
I want to see how mad you can make them.
Okay, give us a couple of names of players who were comparatively unknown heading into the 2024 WXV and who now deserve to be household names.
Well, I will admit that it was a name that it seems other better informed people who watch New Zealand rugby more than I do, and I totally own that. Sorry, Alice. I totally own that. But Caitlin Vahakolo, what a boss. I
Great
know
shout.
I should have known more, but I have a friend who will kill me if I don't say that. Absolutely one of my answers.
We live in the United States. We have to go searching for this stuff. It doesn't come to us.
That's right. It doesn't. Actually, you know what? I do want to bring one back because it was the answer to who should I look for at this WXV, and then I was right.
Yes.
And it was Pamphonette Buisa, who had
Yes.
a fantastic tournament. I'm so thrilled for her. So keep an eye out. I'm so happy that she moved to the pack. Such a boss. Super young, super fit. Stoked. I'm stoked for a lot of the Canada players, but of course I had to shout her out. Let's see who else. I mean, obviously, and I feel like so this isn't a lesser known name to anybody who ever watches women's in the last few months, but was an unknown name till like much more recently than you'd think. Aoife Wafer. Who is very likely
even
going
Americans
to
can now pronounce Aoife. It's
yeah.
I feel like those are the signs that actually tell us the penetration level of the sport.
That's how you do it. Yep, I can pronounce Emer Considine.
Yeah.
But yeah, Aoife Wafer. I think
Flaky
Flaky
George.
Thank you. I think there is almost a 0% chance that she does not at some point win Player of the Year. People are saying this year. I was like, oh, okay, calm down. But absolutely, I think within the next few years, for sure, I think that she could end up being. I think she could end up being absolutely insane at the World Cup. I'm super stoked about that. Who else?
Somebody from a tier 3. Anyone? Did you? And I can't say. Oh, I
Yes.
noticed these people are like
Yes,
maybe.
absolutely. So I am going to go for Spain, unfortunately, just because they really did have overall a pretty great tournament. Of course, I already mentioned Laura Delgado, definitely a known name if you are into women's rugby. But two names. So Amalia Argudo, we've seen a lot of because she also plays sevens. She's great at sevens. Turns out a really great 15s fly half. Excellent. So that was great. She had a pretty great boot. Also young, also just eminently athletic. And also the player of the match in the final match, Alba Capel, but Alba Capé, if I'm doing it in Spanish, I heard because they were all yelling at her, singing her name. Also absolute monster and just the physicality. I found out she plays at Toulon, and now I'm just going to watch her play at Toulon.
Nice.
Yeah. So the good news I can end on there is that there are talks that Elite One, which is the pro league in France, is finally going to be available to people outside of France streaming. I think it's not this season, but it's next season. And I plan on watching the hell out of it.
Julia, I'm going to let you go in just a sec. I have a couple final questions for you. I want to get my idea is 3 MVPs. You and I, we love our Eagles. You're a Welsh fan. Are you now? Every Catholic I know, they say, "Well, I'm a recovering Catholic." Are you a recovering Welsh fan? Or are you still?
I guess so. I tell people when they wonder why I'm like all about them, and it's just that like I didn't get the chance for a long time. We know, USA wasn't even performing super well, but I absolutely have my American answer if I'm allowed to make one of my.
So USA MVP, Welsh MVP,
Right.
WXV MVP.
Great. All right, USA MVP is going to be Captain Doctor, sometimes Captain, almost Doctor Mackenzie Hawkins, who had flawless kicking in all
Perfect
WXV. Perfect kicking, did not miss a conversion. Or penalty. Fantastic. Had a fantastic tournament. Stepped in when Kate hadn't made it back to camp yet. As captain, I think that that's really promising going forward. She has a fantastic, solid head on her. Really good energy on the rugby field. I can't wait to see more of her. She's quiet, which you don't always see from the 10, and she surprises you, and I love that. All right. For Wales had a rough tournament. I'll be honest. Just on numbers and on.
So you're not giving it to the head coach. We'll start with that.
I am not going to give it to Yoan Cunningham this time. I don't think. I am also not going to give it to their tax coach, who my friend Sean, who's probably listening. Sean Connor. There's his name. Not going to be him either. So who it's actually going to be? Probably it's going to have to be what I think was the most solid head on the team. I think the only option for captain going forward, and Yoan, if you're listening, only option for captain going forward is Kira Bevan. Also was the MVP for sure for Wales. But I would also like to give a shout out to Molly Reardon, who I feel like really stepped up in a really shitty situation, which was one of the 3 hookers breaking her collarbone right before jumping on a plane. So ended up just being just the 2. Karis Phillips, who is, she's just been playing a while. She's not her best anymore. And Molly Reardon is a converted scrum half.
So do I remember this right? It was Kira Bevan. You're the captain. Oh wait, you're not the captain. Like, what did that do to her? Like, what was that about? Like, was that just another weird misstep by the coaching? Or am I remembering it wrong?
No, that's a good question. We have a lot of the Welsh pod folks. We have some theories. None of them are particularly positive for the coaches and the management. Look, they are committed to the Yoan and Hannah Jones partnership. Neither of them work. I'm not sure why they keep going back. I think maybe they think that it's a consistency thing or showing that they have faith in their decisions. I'm not sure. You can see my performance better.
I have a comparatively new boss at my work, and a few weeks ago, somebody I don't often see, because he sort of said, "Oh, how's it going with the new boss?" And I was like, "Oh, it's fine." And he said, "Yeah, because I understand you don't really have a working boss," is the way he put it. And I was like,
I see.
You know what?
We all know what a working boss means. And no, that's actually a really great analogy. I don't have anything based in any truth. It's all conjecture. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why, based on performance, based on the impact that one versus the other has on the team, the sheer numbers on the sheet, all of them point to one over the other. I'm not sure. I think, and kind of other diehard fans think as well, that this has to be nearing the end of this dynasty. It has to be over.
It feels inevitable, which feels positive, which is a tough thing to say with Welsh rugby. Those words don't happen into the same sentence very often.
You're right, but I will say that if nothing else, Wales has other times in the past thrived with, not that it was a great situation, but when you hit rock bottom, sometimes that is when you have the quickest come up. And this isn't rock bottom the same as it was in 2018, 2019, which was really rough, but this is certainly a reflecting point. And I think that they know now that this is kind of like, this is going to be the last exit. You're going to have to jump off here, or you're riding it until it crashes.
Okay, WXV MVP overall. Please don't name an English woman.
I'm not going to. I know who everyone wants me to name, and I'm not going to name her because she got a yellow card. That's the only reason.
They were really good. Let's just
Okay, they were fine. They were fine. In terms of the MVP of the whole tournament, honestly, it's Alex Tessier. I'm sorry, just had such a good go. Also,
Yes.
I am not, and people who have followed me across other podcasts, I have talked about it before. I simply don't know what the backs do. I don't know what's going on back there. It's not my business. But watching them is so much fun. Oh no, it really is. It's like going to an air show. I don't know how they got up there, and I don't know how they're doing it where they don't crash. I don't know.
Oh,
Not my
that one's
business.
got smoke coming out of it.
Oh my god! Oh, it's on purpose. Oh, she hit her. Oh, but she's.
Well, they wove in between each other. That was cool.
She ran her right over. Just keep going. I don't have that personally. When I hit them, I go down. We go down. We're on the ground. I did it. No, but there were a few. It was hard. There were a few Canadians I really enjoyed watching. But yeah, it was tough.
The absence of Sophie DeGoody, it just
Yeah.
it kills me.
So that was certainly a narrative spoken about a lot, especially in that last game, actually, because a lot of what you could argue was misfiring at the line out, and it is true that she called lineouts. She's a captain unlike many teams could imagine having. I am sure they did. I will say she was there, so they weren't completely without her. I think if I were a Canadian on the team and she wasn't there, I'd be like, I don't even care about playing good. Wish Sophie was here to make her proud. But
Julia, you are the absolute best. It's always such a treat. I mean, if I tried to describe how much I enjoy this, I would fail because I just don't have the words. You and I are on a mission to grow the game of rugby union in this country. The numbers all tell us the women's game is the fastest growing piece of that. Did the WXV serve that mission? What kind of a dent, did or does this competition make in a global or, in particular, American consciousness?
There are so few opportunities as it is for us to showcase American rugby. Honestly, the only other opportunity we get on the same level as WXV is the Pac-4. The Pac-4 is good. It's a good start. I think, and everybody kind of thinks it should be Pac-6 eventually. I think it'll probably expand to that. But that said, because of the nature of Pac-4, a lot of the time we don't even get to watch it. This time we got to watch USA Rugby in a palatable time zone for all of us. That's a big deal. Was everything perfect? Absolutely not. I don't think everything is going to be perfect for a while, not even for this tournament, not even however much money and time World Rugby ends up throwing at it. I still think that it was good. It was necessary because we need more games to make rankings for a World Cup. But also, so many of these nations wouldn't have gotten to otherwise. A big talking point of this was it was the first time Madagascar played outside of southern Africa. Not even just sub-Saharan Africa. It was the first time they left.
Yeah.
And so, it sucks that you had to go to Dubai to do it, but it was probably still a really fun experience. It's the first time playing global rugby on tour. That is something you now can't take away from Madagascar. It's something you can't take away from Samoa. That is all too important to women's rugby, I feel, to get nitpicky about the details. We'll get the details. It'll take some time, but if you're patient, we'll get it.
Well, you mentioned, it's not perfect. Of course, the annoying thing people always say is, well, perfect is the enemy of the good.
Which is.
If 2000 Rugby Julia was here on a Monday after finishing watching this competition, how over the moon would you have been with the fact that you just got to watch this?
I mean, it's hard to describe. That's a really great question to ask because that really was back when I first really realized how for a place where we as Americans are raised to understand that we have so much privilege and we have so much more than a lot of the world has, that we did not have this at all. And it was something that at least, a lot of it, in my case, a lot of young queer women were looking for. It was a place for us to be. And looking at this now, and other than being in Dubai, everything was in respect and in nodding to what came before.
Yeah.
And I would consider the fact that I could watch it all, even if I had to stay up till 3 a.m. Oh no, not that. There are other places on the globe. I don't care. I'll stay up till 3 a.m. to do it. It's that you brought it to me. You gave these girls a chance.
Yeah.
You helped them if their union didn't have enough money. Absolutely, I'm going to watch it. I would be over the moon. And you can tell, even though the crowds weren't huge, the people who really wanted to be there were thrilled to be there.
When you look back on the last World Cup, that game, England versus New Zealand, still one of my all-time favorite games. It's in the top 3, if not number 1. Like, and the crowd, when you saw the attendance there, like that was, I think I probably asked you about this. I probably asked, was that a watershed moment? Like, now we have a little more space. It was, right? That was
absolutely.
That was a tipping point, right?
No question. Yeah, and it was in New Zealand as well. And I think that hate to give it to them, but I think that Rugby World Cup 25 is going to greatly change the narrative about how far behind women's rugby is. I don't think we're that far behind anymore.
Well, I'm a little worried because podcast offshoot number 9 has to be, is it going to be bad for women's rugby when the next World Cup's in England and England just steamroll everybody? I don't want to start talking about it right now. I'm a little worried.
No, and we don't know that. We should conclude that we don't actually know that, and we can doomsay it when it gets closer. But okay,
I'll get my doomsay set up in my little cabinet.
That's fine.
It's pretty crowded in there. I gotta admit.
Exactly, and I'm gonna get my sobbing ready, and then we'll have a podcast.
Julia, before I let you go, I do want to ask about I can't really call it the rap because I called the other pod the rap, but it's the WWRAP pod. You've been doing it with Hugh and Harley, and I'm always scared that I'm going to say it wrong because of the spelling, but it's just Sean, right?
It's just Sean.
Reached out to her, asked if she would come on the show. Got the no response, by the way, but I'm happy to listen. I'm happy to listen to y'all anyway.
Nope, I didn't know that.
So what's next for the pod? What's happening after the? I'm sure there's a great one that's about to appear in my feed right about now, probably. And what's next?
Yes, indeed. Actually, no, it's not to blow our business out ever. It was actually my fault. I couldn't make it last week. We are recording this week. We're doing a wrap up. And then we are also going to do some, it's not a preview anymore because it's already started, but we're going to take a peek at what is going on in PWR.
Yes. I intentionally, at first I realized I wasn't prepared for it, and then I realized I'm just going to give myself permission to bury my head in the sand.
No, it's fine.
I'm going to look back, like
most of us
probably tomorrow. I'm going to be like, okay, who's been playing while the other players are away?
Yeah, I was going to say, in full honesty, and I'm somebody who keeps on top of a lot of it. I'm on top of it. I know what's going on, but only barely. I'm not ready yet. I'm doing my homework, and I will be ready when we record. And then I hope everybody doesn't hate the hot takes.
I did see is it the first hijabi woman to score a try in professional rugby ever?
What up, Z? Yeah, Z had a great. It was awesome. I was thrilled. I've been following her progress for a long time. She has her own little social media project, Road to the Red Roses.
Oh.
Yep. And one of her big milestones was making a PWR team, which she did, and then immediately upon her debut, scored a try.
Well, you and I will be able to talk about it in the future. Absolutely. Julia, I treasure these moments. Thank you so much for joining us here and sharing your insights. It's a true joy for me. I really appreciate it. Any last thoughts before I let you go?
No, thank you so much for having me. It is always a joy to talk to you. I love getting to talk USA Rugby, especially with somebody who knows and loves it as much as I do. I hope everybody keeps up with us. Maybe we'll drop link to my other one, but we're going to keep it up. Women's isn't stopping. Keep an eye out. Take a little rest over this break, but come 2025.
The women never stop. They don't care. They don't care how hard it gets. They just keep coming.
It's coming. And of course, I will be putting out as much as I can about all of the various domestic pro comps.
Yes.
And you should become crazy about those too.
Indeed. Thank you, my dear friend. I appreciate it so much. Cheers. Talk to you soon. And be well.
It gives me great pleasure to be here today.
Oh, it does, Nate. You want to tempt the wrath of the whatever from high atop the thing?